I'm Allison, 31, and literally last month, my rep as the family glue? Yeah, it totally backfired. The piece I'd been holding together, sacrificing my own needs to keep everyone else's drama in check? It blew up into a full-on family betrayal during a Zoom call I'll never forget. My parents and siblings, the ones I always propped up, straight up demanded I stop making everything about me when I shared my thyroid cancer diagnosis, and when I pushed back, the screen froze with their cold stares. "You're being dramatic, Allison," Mom snapped, with everyone nodding like I'd just wrecked their perfect vacation plans. But here's the tea. Their dismissal didn't break me, it lit a spark. I'm not just pushing back, I'm about to flip the script and change everything. A quick note. This story is copyrighted by the YouTube channel Guest Stories. Reposting, revoicing, or editing this content without permission constitutes copyright infringement. Thank you for respecting original creative work. Now, back to the story. It started with that Zoom call, the one I'd been dreading all week. I'd spent years being the reliable middle child, mediating fights, remembering birthdays, even covering for my older sister Tara's missed deadlines, or my younger brother Jake's reckless spending. I was the one who kept the family from fracturing, always swallowing my own needs to keep the peace. But that evening, my hands trembled as I clicked "Join Meeting," knowing I had to tell them about the diagnosis that had turned my world upside down. I'd rehearsed it in my head 100 times. I have thyroid cancer. I need surgery next week. Simple, direct, no room for misinterpretation. But as the faces popped up on my screen, Mom with her perfectly styled hair, Dad adjusting his glasses, Tara scrolling her phone, Jake slouched with a beer, I felt my throat tighten. The little box with my own face showed dark circles under my eyes, a stark contrast to their relaxed, vacation planning vibes. They were in the middle of debating whether Aruba or Cancun was better for their annual trip. I waited for a pause, my heart pounding like it was trying to escape my chest. "Guys, I need to tell you something serious," I finally said, my voice quieter than I'd intended. The chatter stopped, but not out of concern, more like annoyance. Tara rolled her eyes, and Jake muttered, "What now, Allison?" I took a deep breath, fingers gripping the edge of my desk. "I've been diagnosed with thyroid cancer. My surgery's scheduled for next Tuesday." Silence. Not the kind that feels supportive, but the kind that feels like a slap. Mom's lips pursed, like she was tasting something sour. Dad shifted in his chair, avoiding my gaze. Tara put her phone down, but only to cross her arms. Jake just stared at his beer can, tracing the rim with his thumb. I waited, expecting questions, concern, anything. Instead, Mom spoke first. "Allison, we're in the middle of planning our trip. Can we talk about this later?" My stomach dropped. I'd spent my life being the one who showed up, when Tara's wedding nearly fell apart, when Jake needed bailing out of debt, when Mom's anxiety spirals needed soothing, and now with the word cancer hanging in the air, they couldn't even pause their vacation plans? "It's not something that can wait," I said, my voice sharper now. "This is serious, I need you guys." Dad cleared his throat, his classic move to dismiss tension. "You're tough, Allison, you'll be fine, you always are." Tara chimed in, "Yeah, isn't thyroid cancer like the easy one?" Her air quotes around easy made my blood boil. Jake just shrugged, like this was no different from me asking for a ride to the airport. I wanted to scream, to make them see me, but my voice cracked instead. "This isn't about me being tough. I'm scared. I need my family." Mom sighed, the kind of sigh that said I was being a burden. "Allison, don't make this dramatic. We'll call you after the trip, okay?" The screen felt like a wall between us, their faces pixelated but their indifference crystal clear. I ended the call, my hands shaking so hard I nearly dropped my laptop. The silence in my apartment was deafening, but it wasn't just their words that stung. It was the years of being invisible, of being the one who fixed everything while they took the credit. As I sat there, staring at the blank screen, something shifted inside me. Their neglect wasn't new, but this time, it was a line they couldn't uncross. I wasn't just going to survive this surgery alone, I was going to make them see me. Really see me, for the first time. As I sat in the dim light of my living room, the glow from my laptop screen fading, that spark of defiance flickered, but didn't catch fire right away. Instead, a wave of memories crashed over me, pulling me back to all the times I'd been shoved into the shadows while my family basked in their own spotlights. It wasn't just about the cancer diagnosis or their vacation plans. It was a lifetime of me pouring everything into them, only to get scraps in return. I curled up on the couch, hugging my knees to my chest, and let the flashbacks play out like an unwanted movie reel, each one sharpening the ache in my gut. The first one that hit me was from high school graduation, back when I was 18, and thought maybe, just maybe, I'd finally get my moment. I'd busted my ass to be valedictorian, staying up late studying, skipping parties, even tutoring Jake through his failing classes so Mom wouldn't have another meltdown. The day came, and I stood on that stage in my cap and gown, heart racing as I delivered my speech about perseverance and family bonds. My hands gripped the podium so tight my knuckles turned white, and I scanned the crowd for their faces. Mom was there, but her eyes kept darting to her phone. Dad was clapping but half-heartedly like he was thinking about work. Tara, already in college, was whispering to her boyfriend. Jake was slouched, picking at his nails. Afterward, at the family dinner we threw at our favorite Italian place, the praise flowed, but not for me. Tara announced she'd landed a summer internship at some fancy marketing firm, and suddenly the table erupted. Mom beamed, raising her glass, to Tara, our rising star. Dad slapped her on the back, saying how proud he was of her ambition. Jake even piped up with a rare compliment. I sat there, my diploma tucked under my chair, forcing a smile as I passed the breadbasket. When I tried to steer the conversation back, "Hey, what about my speech?" Mom waved it off. "Oh honey, that was nice, but let's not hog the attention. Tara's news is big." My fork clattered against my plate a little too loudly, but no one noticed. I swallowed the lump in my throat, telling myself it was fine, that family meant supporting each other. But inside, it felt like I'd been erased. Then there was my college years, when I juggled a double major in biology and psychology, working 2 part-time jobs to cover what scholarships didn't. I remember the day I won that research grant for my thesis on mental health in families, $5,000, enough to ease the financial strain I'd been hiding from everyone. I called home excited, my voice bubbling as I explained how it'd lead to a publication. Dad listened for a minute, then cut in. "That's great, Allie, but Jake just got promoted at his warehouse job. Can you believe it? Manager at 20. The line went to speakerphone, and suddenly it was all about Jake's new responsibilities, Mom gushing over how he'd turned things around. Tara jumped in too, sharing her latest promotion. I gripped the phone tighter, my excitement deflating like a punctured balloon. "What about my grant?" I asked softly. "Oh, we'll celebrate next time," Mom said dismissively. That next time never came. I hung up, staring at the grant letter on my dorm desk, folding it away, as tears blurred the words. Flash forward to my mid-20s, when I landed my first real job as a lab technician at a hospital, a step toward my dream of helping people through science. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, earned through nights of cramming for certifications while I helped Tara plan her wedding. The ceremony was lavish. Mom and Dad spared no expense, toasting Tara's perfect life with her new husband. At the reception, I gave a toast, my hand steady despite the nerves, talking about love and support. Everyone cheered, but later when I mentioned my job promotion to senior tech, Dad patted my shoulder absently. "Good for you, kid, but look at Jake, he's starting his own side hustle in graphic design." The family clustered around Jake's phone, oohing over his mediocre logos. I stood on the periphery, nursing my drink, feeling the familiar sting. Why was my steady climb never enough? Tara's weddings, Jake's startups, they got parades. My achievements? A nod, if that. Even smaller moments piled up, like birthdays. Mine always fell during Tara's busy season or Jake's latest crisis. Last year at 30, I organized a quiet dinner for myself, hoping they'd show. Mom called to cancel. "Sweetie, we're at Jake's art show, it's his big break." I ate alone, picking at my cake, the candle wax dripping onto the plate. Their gifts were afterthoughts, generic cards with cash, while they lavished Tara with trips and Jake with gadgets. As these memories swirled, I rocked slightly on the couch, my nails digging into my palms. It wasn't jealousy, it was exhaustion from being the invisible glue. I'd mediated their fights, loaned money I couldn't afford, listened to their woes, and for what? To be sidelined again, even with cancer knocking at my door. My breathing grew ragged, tears slipping down my cheeks. I wiped them away roughly, standing up to pace the room. The apartment felt too small, the walls closing in with echoes of their indifference. I stopped at the window, staring at the city lights, realizing this wasn't new, it was the pattern. But tonight, after that call, it hit differently. Their vacation choice wasn't a fluke. It was the culmination of me always coming last. I sank back down, pulling a blanket over me, the weight comforting against the chill inside. Part of me wanted to call them back, beg for understanding, but another part, the spark, whispered to let it burn. Surgery loomed, and I'd face it alone if needed. But these flashbacks clarified one thing. Their neglect had shaped me, made me resilient, but it was time to stop accepting it. As sleep tugged at me, I clung to that thought, the memories fading into a resolve that felt like armor. As I slumped back in my chair, the glow from my laptop screen fading to black, a wave of memories crashed over me like a tide I couldn't hold back. It wasn't just the call that hurt, it was the confirmation of what I'd always known deep down, but tried to ignore. My family had never really seen me, not as a person with her own dreams and struggles, but as the reliable fixer who faded into the background once the crisis passed. I stared at the empty water glass on my desk, my fingers tracing the condensation rings, feeling the chill seep into my skin. The apartment was too quiet, the kind of quiet that amplifies every thought, and right then those thoughts took me back to the moments that had built this invisible wall between us. One memory stood out sharpest, from 5 years ago when I'd graduated with my master's in social work. I'd busted my gut for that degree, nights cramming while holding down 2 jobs, weekends volunteering at shelters to build my resume, all while fielding calls from home about Tara's latest promotion or Jake's new car. The ceremony was on a sunny Saturday in May, the auditorium buzzing with families cheering as names were called. I'd invited everyone, even booked a restaurant afterward, hoping for once they'd show up for me. But as I walked across that stage, diploma in hand, my eyes scanned the crowd. Empty seats where they should have been. Mom had texted that morning, "Sorry, sweetie, Jake's soccer tournament ran long, we'll celebrate next time." Next time never came. I remember gripping that diploma so tight the edges creased, forcing a smile for the photographer while my classmates hugged their parents. Tara had gotten her business degree 2 years earlier, and oh, the fanfare. Dad rented a hall, Mom baked her famous cake, Jake even flew in from college. They toasted her bright future, all night, clinking glasses, while I sat in the corner, refilling drinks without a single question about my own classes. When I mentioned my upcoming finals, Dad just nodded absently, his hand on Tara's shoulder. "That's great, Allison. Tara, tell us more about that job offer." Her stories always took center stage, her conventional path the one they understood and praised. Mine, helping troubled kids? It was nice, but not worth disrupting their schedules. Another flash hit me then, from when I was 25, landing my first big job at a nonprofit. I'd coordinated a fundraiser that raised enough to keep the center open another year. My boss had called it a miracle, even wrote me a glowing recommendation. I was buzzing with pride, called home to share the news. "Guess what? We hit our goal," I'd said, voice bubbly over the phone. Mom paused. I could hear her stirring something in the kitchen. "Oh, that's wonderful, dear. Hold on, Jake just got accepted to that tech program. Isn't that amazing?" The conversation veered straight to him, his real achievement in their eyes, the one with gadgets and salaries they could brag about at church. Jake chuckled when he got on the line. "Yeah, sis, coding's where the money is. You should try it." No questions about my event, no curiosity about the families I'd helped. I hung up, my excitement deflated, fingers drumming on the table as I forced myself to email thank yous instead of dwelling. Even holidays reinforced it. Last Christmas, I'd driven 6 hours through snow to be there, arms full of gifts I'd picked thoughtfully. A book on gardening for Mom, tools for Dad, personalized mugs for Tara and Jake. They opened them with quick thanks, then dove into praising Tara's new house. "Look at these photos, granite counters," Mom gushed, passing her phone around. Jake's startup idea got dissected over dinner, everyone brainstorming names while I cleared plates. When I tried to share about a client I'd helped reunite with her kids, Dad cut in, "That's sweet, but let's not get too heavy tonight." My story died unspoken, my hands stacking dishes in the sink, soap bubbles popping like my unspoken frustrations. These weren't isolated incidents. They were the pattern. Tara's wedding 3 years back? I was maid of honor, organized everything from favors to the rehearsal dinner, even calmed her pre-ceremony meltdown. The toasts were all about her fairy tale, with nods to Jake's best man speech. Me? A quick, thanks to Allison for helping out. No mention of the months I'd sacrificed. Jake's college graduation? They flew across the country, posted photos everywhere. My high school valedictorian speech? They arrived late, missed half, blamed traffic. Sitting there in my apartment, the weight of it all pressed on my chest, making it hard to breathe. My thyroid, the lump I'd ignored at first, thinking it was stress, now felt like a symbol of everything I'd swallowed over the years. I'd achieved things, promotions, lives touched through my work, even a small award from the city for community service. But to them, it was never enough, never as shiny as Tara's corporate climbs or Jake's tech pursuits. They celebrated the visible successes, the ones that fit their idea of winning. Mine were quiet, behind the scenes like me. Tears blurred my vision as I stood up, pacing the room, my socks whispering on the carpet. Why had I kept trying? Why chase their approval when it was always just out of reach? The diagnosis had stripped away the illusions. Facing surgery alone wasn't new. It was the culmination of a lifetime of being sidelined. But as the memories replayed, a quiet resolve built. This time, their neglect would force a reckoning. I wasn't invisible. I was done pretending to be. That quiet resolve lingered as I stopped pacing and leaned against the kitchen counter, my fingers gripping the cool granite to steady myself. The lump in my throat, the literal one, throbbed faintly, a reminder that this wasn't just emotional baggage anymore. It had started months ago, subtly at first, like a whisper I could ignore amid the chaos of daily life. But ignoring it had been my specialty, hadn't it? Just like I'd ignored the family's slights, pushing them down to keep functioning. Now, in the aftermath of that call, the memory of how it all began flooded back, sharp and unrelenting, forcing me to relive the secret I'd built around my failing body. It was early spring, about 6 months before the diagnosis, when I first noticed something off. I was in the bathroom getting ready for work, brushing my teeth with mechanical motions, my mind already on the day's client meetings at the nonprofit. As I tilted my head to rinse, my fingers brushed against my neck absent-mindedly, and there it was. A small swelling, no bigger than a pea, just below my Adam's apple. I paused, toothbrush hovering, and pressed gently. It didn't hurt, but it felt wrong. Solid, unyielding. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, the fluorescent light casting harsh shadows under my eyes from another late night helping Jake with his resume over the phone. Probably just swollen glands, I muttered to myself, shaking it off. I'd been tired lately, voice a bit hoarse, but who wasn't? Stress, I thought. Always stress. Over the next few weeks, I caught myself touching it more often, while typing emails, during lunch breaks, even in bed scrolling through social media late at night. It didn't grow much at first, but the fatigue did. Mornings became a battle. I'd drag myself out of bed, muscles aching like I'd run a marathon in my sleep. Swallowing coffee felt scratchy, and my neck ached if I turned too quick. I popped ibuprofen like candy, telling myself it was nothing, that I didn't have time for doctor's visits. Work was piling up, coordinating therapy sessions for at-risk families, the kind of behind-the-scenes grind that mirrored my role at home. Calling out sick wasn't an option. People depended on me, and deep down, a voice whispered that admitting weakness would just confirm what my family already thought, that I was the dramatic one, always complicating things. But then came the aha moment, the one that shattered my denial. It was a Tuesday evening in late April, after a particularly grueling day. I just finished a session with a client whose story hit too close, neglected by her parents, fighting for visibility. As I locked up the office, the irony twisted in my gut. Walking to my car in the parking lot, the spring air crisp but heavy with pollen, I felt a wave of dizziness hit. My vision blurred, and I steadied myself against the door, hand flying to my neck. The lump. It was bigger now, noticeably so, and tender. Panic bubbled up, hot and unfamiliar. I slid into the driver's seat, gripping the wheel, breathing shallow. "This isn't stress," I whispered, the words fogging the window. For the first time I let myself think the word cancer. It hung there, terrifying, but it fit. My biology background from college kicked in. Thyroid issues, lumps, fatigue. I knew the signs. had even counseled clients through similar scares. But for me? No, I was the helper, not the one needing help. That night, alone in my apartment, I dove into research, laptop balanced on my knees as I sat cross-legged on the bed. Fingers flying over the keys, I searched symptoms, statistics, survival rates. The screen's blue light illuminated my face, casting eerie shadows. Thyroid cancer. Common, treatable if caught early, but aggressive in some cases. I read forums, stories of people who'd ignored lumps for months, regretting it. My heart raced, palms sweaty against the trackpad. I booked an online appointment with my primary care doctor for the next day, but doubt crept in. What if it was nothing? What if I was overreacting, just like Mom always said? I closed the laptop, curling under the covers, but sleep evaded me. Every swallow reminded me, a subtle pressure building. The doctor's visit the next morning was a blur of waiting rooms and clipped questions. I sat in the exam chair, legs swinging slightly, fingers twisting the hem of my shirt. Dr. Ellis, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, palpated my neck, her gloved hands cool and methodical. "How long has this been here?" she asked, brow furrowing. "A few months," I admitted, voice small. She ordered blood tests and an ultrasound, her tone professional but urgent. "We'll get to the bottom of it." As I left, needle marks fresh on my arm, the internal struggle intensified. Tell the family? No. Not yet. They'd dismiss it, turn it into their drama. Tara would compare it to her stress lump from work. Jake would joke. Mom would sigh about timing. I drove home, knuckles white on the steering wheel, deciding to keep it secret. It was mine to handle, like everything else. The waiting was agony. Days blurred into blood draws, scans, the ultrasound wand pressing cold gel against my skin as the tech's face remained neutral. "The doctor will call," she said, avoiding my eyes. I threw myself into work, micromanaging tasks to distract, organizing files with precise labels, wiping down my desk until it shone, even staying late to help a colleague. But nights were worse. I'd lie awake, tracing the lump, imagining worst-case scenarios. What if it spread? What if surgery went wrong? The fear clawed at me, but so did anger, at myself for waiting, at my body for betraying me, at the family for making vulnerability feel unsafe. Finally, the call came 2 weeks later, while I was grocery shopping, pushing a cart down the aisle. Dr. Ellis's voice was steady. "Allison, the biopsy confirms thyroid cancer, papillary type, good prognosis, but we need to act." My cart stopped abruptly, bumping a display of canned soup. I gripped the handle, the store spinning. "Surgery?" I managed. "Yes, to remove the thyroid. Soon." I thanked her numbly, hung up, and continued shopping on autopilot, loading apples into a bag with shaking hands. Cancer, at 31. The word echoed as I checked out, the cashier's chatter distant. I didn't tell anyone that day, or the next. I built the secret like a fortress, scheduling consults, researching surgeons, all while maintaining my routine. At work I smiled through meetings, hands folded to hide tremors. On calls with family I dodged questions about my tired voice, blaming allergies. Keeping it hidden felt empowering at first, proof I didn't need them. But, as surgery loomed, the isolation gnawed. Late one night, staring at the ceiling, tears silent on my pillow, I realized this secret wasn't strength, it was survival mode, born from years of neglect. Yet, it was all I had. Until I couldn't hold it anymore, leading to that fateful Zoom call. But even then, their reaction proved I'd been right to hide it. Proving I'd been right to hide it didn't make the days that followed any easier. If anything, it amplified the hollow ache in my chest as surgery loomed closer. Like a storm cloud I couldn't outrun. The initial Zoom call had been a week ago, and since then, radio silence from them. No check-ins, no apologies, just me navigating the pre-op maze alone. I spent those days in a fog of appointments and paperwork, but the eve of judgment hit hardest the night before my surgery, when I finally broke and called them one last time, hoping against hope for a shred of support. My apartment was dimly lit by a single lamp on the coffee table, casting long shadows across the packed overnight bag at my feet. Pajamas, toiletries, a book I'd never read because my mind wouldn't focus. The clock on the wall ticked relentlessly toward midnight, each second a reminder that tomorrow I'd be wheeled into an operating room without a single family member by my side. I sat on the edge of the couch, phone in hand, thumb hovering over Mom's contact. My neck throbbed dully, the lump a constant presence now, and fatigue weighed on me like a wet blanket. I'd followed all the pre-surgery instructions to the letter. No food after 8 p.m., clear liquids only, a shower with that antiseptic soap that left my skin raw and smelling like a hospital already. The surgeon had called earlier to confirm. Dr. Ramirez, his voice calm and reassuring over the line, explaining again how they'd removed the thyroid, checked the lymph nodes, maybe more if needed. "You'll be in good hands," he'd said. But whose hands would hold mine in the waiting room? I stared at the phone, my fingers clenching around it. Reluctantly, I hit call. Maybe they'd had time to think, to realize what this meant. Maybe. The line rang twice before Mom picked up, her voice bright and distracted, like she was midway through packing. "Allison? Honey, we're just about to head to the airport. What's up?" In the background I heard the zipper of a suitcase, Dad's muffled laugh, Tara calling out about forgetting her charger. They were really doing this, flying off to Aruba while I faced the knife. My mouth went dry and I swallowed hard, wincing at the pressure. "Mom, surgery's tomorrow, early morning. I was hoping someone could come, even just for the day." A pause, then a sigh, the kind I'd heard 1,000 times, loaded with impatience. "Allison, we talked about this. The tickets are non-refundable and we've all been looking forward to this break. You know how stressful things have been with Jake's job hunt and Tara's deadlines." I could picture her, hand on hip, glancing at the clock. My free hand fiddled with the strap of my bag, twisting it tighter and tighter. "But it's cancer, Mom. What if something goes wrong? I need you guys." Dad must have grabbed the phone because his voice came next, gruff and final. "Allie, you're strong, always have been. The doctor said it's routine, right? We'll call you from the resort once we're settled." Routine? I wanted to laugh, but it came out as a choked sound. My eyes stung and I blinked rapidly, refusing to cry. Not yet. Tara's voice piped in from speakerphone now. "Yeah, sis, don't worry. Thyroid stuff is super common. My friend had it and was back to work in a week. Fine, we'll bring you back some souvenirs." Souvenirs? Like that could replace their presents. Jake mumbled something about bad timing, his words slurred like he'd already started on vacation drinks. I leaned forward, elbows on knees, free hand pressing against my forehead. The room spun slightly, a mix of anxiety and the pre-op nerves. "You don't get it. This isn't a vacation conflict. It's my life. I've always been there for you. Tara's divorce scare? I dropped everything. Jake's car accident? I sat in the ER all night, and now when I need you." My voice cracked and I hated it, hated sounding weak. Mom jumped in, her tone sharpening. "Don't guilt us, Allison. We've supported you plenty. Remember who paid for your college books? This trip is important for family bonding." Family bonding, without me. The irony burned. Dad tried to wrap it up. "Look, we'll pray for you. Call us after, okay? Love you." Click. The line went dead and I sat there, phone slipping from my fingers to the cushion. The silence was thicker now, broken only by my ragged breathing. I stood up slowly, legs shaky, and walked to the kitchen, pouring a glass of water with trembling hands. The cool liquid soothed my throat, but not the fire inside. They were prioritizing sand and sun over my surgery, over me, again. I set the glass down too hard, water sloshing over the rim, and gripped the counter, nails digging into the wood. Memories flickered, quick ones, like the time I canceled my own birthday plans to help Mom after her minor surgery, holding her hand in recovery. Or when Dad's business faltered, and I loaned him money from my savings without question. I'd built my life around being their rock, but rocks don't need support, do they? That's what they'd decided. I paced back to the living room, kicking the bag lightly, its contents shifting with a soft thud. Tomorrow I'd check in alone, fill out forms listing no emergency contact, because what was the point? Friends had offered, but it wasn't the same. This was supposed to be family. As the clock struck midnight, I sank onto the bed, curling up without changing, the antiseptic scent clinging to my skin. My mind raced through what-ifs, complications, anesthesia fears, waking up to an empty room. The abandonment settled like lead in my stomach, not just the vacation choice, but the casual way they'd dismissed it. "Love you," Dad had said, but it felt hollow, conditional on me not needing too much. I pulled the blanket over my head, tears finally coming hot and silent. Part of me wanted to rage text them, spill every hurt, but exhaustion won. Instead, I whispered to the dark, "You'll see. One day you'll have to see." Sleep came fitfully, dreams tangled with operating rooms and empty chairs, But underneath, that spark from the first call glowed brighter. Their choice tonight wasn't the end, it was the catalyst. Tomorrow I'd face the surgery alone, but I wouldn't stay alone forever. Sleep had been a fleeting mercy, broken by the shrill beep of my alarm at 4:30 a.m., pulling me from fragmented dreams of empty airports and echoing hospital halls. The surgery was set for 7 a.m., and as I swung my legs over the bed's edge, the reality hit like cold water. The family was gone, en route to their paradise, while I headed to the sterile unknown alone. My overnight bag felt heavier as I slung it over my shoulder, the zipper's teeth catching slightly on the fabric, a small frustration amid the bigger storm. I glanced in the mirror, my reflection pale and drawn, the lump visible now if you knew where to look. No time for breakfast, just a sip of water to wet my dry mouth before calling a rideshare. The driver was chatty, asking about my early plans, but I mumbled something about an appointment, staring out the window at the pre-dawn streets, lights blurring into streaks. My fingers drummed on the bag's strap, each tap a countdown to the gauntlet I knew awaited, not from them directly but from the void they'd left, amplified by every question I'd face at the hospital. The medical center loomed as we pulled up, its glass facade reflecting the first hints of sunrise, a deceptive calm. I paid the driver with a forced thanks, stepping out into the crisp air that nipped at my exposed neck. The automatic doors whooshed open, releasing a wave of antiseptic scent that made my stomach churn. The check-in desk was manned by a nurse in blue scrubs, her name tag reading Karen, clipboard in hand. She looked up with a professional smile, but her eyes flicked to my solitary figure, no entourage in tow. "Good morning. Name and procedure?" I gave my details, voice steady despite the knot in my throat, handing over my ID with fingers that trembled just a bit. She typed efficiently, keys clicking like judgments. "And who's with you today, family, friend?" There it was, the first jab, unintentional but piercing. I shifted my weight, bag digging into my shoulder. "Just me." Her eyebrows rose slightly, pen pausing mid-note. "No one at all? We recommend having support for pre-op." I forced a shrug, avoiding her gaze by focusing on the scuff mark on my shoe. "They're out of town, vacation." The word tasted bitter and she nodded slowly, lips pursing in that sympathetic way that felt like pity. "Okay, well, we'll take good care of you. Have a seat, someone will call you soon." I nodded, retreating to the waiting area, chairs hard and unyielding under me. My hands clasped in my lap, knuckles whitening as I squeezed, the contempt from last night's call echoing in my head. Mom's sigh, Dad's dismissal, Tara's air quotes around my fear. It all replayed, a barrage I couldn't escape even here. A few minutes later another nurse, this one younger with a ponytail and a name tag Mia, escorted me to a prep room. The hallway lights buzzed overhead, fluorescent and unforgiving, casting shadows on the linoleum floor. She chatted lightly about the weather, but as we entered the curtained bay, her questions turned personal. "So solo today? That's brave. Most folks have a whole crew." I sat on the exam bed, paper crinkling under me, and slipped off my shoes as instructed, toes curling against the cold floor. "Yeah, family couldn't make it." My voice was flat, but inside, the words stung, their choice, their priorities, hurled back at me through her innocent probe. She handed me a gown, ties dangling like loose ends. "Well, you're in great hands. Dr. Ramirez is the best. Anyone we can call for updates?" I shook my head, folding my clothes with deliberate creases, stacking them neatly on the chair to give my hands something to do. "No, they're unreachable. On a plane." Her hand paused on the IV kit, a flicker of concern crossing her face. "Oh wow. Timing, huh? Must be tough." Tough didn't cover it. As she prepped my arm for the IV, swabbing the skin with alcohol that chilled instantly, I bit my lip against the prick of the needle, and the sharper prick of memory. Tara's backhanded, easy cancer comment, Jake's shrug, it was like they were here whispering condescensions in my ear. "This might pinch," Mia said, tape securing the line with gentle presses. I nodded, staring at the ceiling tiles, counting the dots to distract from the building pressure in my chest. Another staff member popped in, an anesthesiologist named Dr. Patel, clipboard in hand. He reviewed my chart, glasses perched on his nose. "History looks good. Any allergies? And post-op, who's driving you home?" The question landed like a punch. I clenched the gown's fabric in my fists, the material bunching. "I'll cab it, no one's available." He glanced up, pen tapping the paper. We prefer not to discharge without assistance, safety reasons. I met his eyes then, my own narrowing slightly. I get it, but it's just me, always has been. He noted something, nodding reluctantly. All right, we'll discuss with the team. As he left, Mia returned with a warm blanket, draping it over me with a pat on the shoulder that felt too kind, too exposing. Hang in there, families can be complicated. Complicated, understatement of the year. I pulled the blanket higher, fingers tracing the woven edges as waves of their past slights crashed in, the ignored graduations, the sidelined achievements now culminating in this ultimate abandonment. The room's hum, monitors beeping softly, distant voices, amplified my isolation. A volunteer wheeled in a cart with water, offering a cup with a smile. Thirsty? And where's your support team hiding? I took the cup, hand steady now from sheer will, but my sip was small, throat tight. Not hiding, just not here. Each interaction piled on, a gauntlet of well-meaning questions that rubbed salt into the wound of their contempt. Why ask about family if it only highlights the lack? I shifted on the bed, the IV tugging slightly, a reminder of vulnerability. Internally, I railed, against them for choosing beaches over bedsides, against myself for expecting different. But as the minutes ticked, resolve hardened. This barrage wasn't breaking me, it was forging something new. Mia checked back, adjusting the blanket's fold. Ready? We'll wheel you soon. I nodded, lying back, eyes closing against the lights. The family's absence screamed louder than any words, but in that silence, I found a whisper of strength. Surgery awaited, and I'd endure it, their contempt a shadow I was stepping out from. Surgery awaited, but before they could wheel me away, that whisper of strength faltered under the weight of the empty bay around me. The monitors packed soft beeps mocking the silence where family voices should have been. Mia had stepped out to fetch the transport team, leaving me alone with the IV drip's steady rhythm, and my phone clutched in my hand like a lifeline. The screen glowed under the blanket, my thumb hesitating over the family group chat. They were at the airport by now. Boarding soon, but maybe not yet. Maybe there was still time for them to turn around, to choose me. My heart thudded unevenly, syncing with the pulse oximeter clipped to my finger, its light flashing red. I hit the call button for Mom, the ringtone echoing tinny through the speaker, each trill amplifying the knot in my stomach. Pick up, I willed silently, fingers tightening around the device until the edges bit into my palm. It rang 4 times before connecting, the background noise erupting, announcements blaring about final boarding, the hum of crowds, a child's cry cutting through. Mom's voice came breathy like she was rushing. Allison, we're about to board, this better be quick. No hello, no how are you, just urgency laced with irritation. I shifted on the bed, the paper beneath me crinkling loudly, and pulled the blanket higher against a sudden chill. Mom, I'm at the hospital, they're prepping me now. Please, can someone stay behind, or come after landing? I can't do this alone. A pause, filled with airport static, then her exhale, sharp and frustrated. Honey, we've been over this, the flight's non-stop, we'll be in Aruba by afternoon. You said the surgery's routine, there was that word again, diminishing everything. My free hand fisted the blanket's edge, knuckles whitening as I fought the tremor in my voice. It's not just routine. There are risks, bleeding, vocal cord damage. What if I wake up and no one's there? The words spilled out, raw. And I hated the plea in them, but desperation clawed up my throat alongside the lump. Dad's voice joined, muffled at first like he was grabbing the phone. Allie, calm down, you're making this harder than it needs to be. We need this trip. Your mother's blood pressure's been through the roof with all the family stress. Family stress, meaning Tara's work complaints, Jake's unemployment woes, the ones I'd mediated from afar. I could hear Tara in the background, her tone clipped. Yes, sis, don't guilt-trip us, we've got our own stuff. Jake chuckled faintly, adding, Come on, Al, you're the tough one, you'll bounce back. Their words landed like slaps, each one escalating the hurt, but I pressed on, sitting up slightly, the IV tugging at my arm with a sharp pinch. Mom, Dad, please, I've always been there. Remember when Tara had her appendix out? I took time off work, sat with her for days. Or Jake's broken arm, I drove him to every appointment. My voice rose, cracking on the last word, and I swallowed hard, eyes stinging. The bay's curtain fluttered as a nurse passed outside, but no one entered. Mom sighed again, longer this time. That's different, Allison. You're exaggerating. The doctors will handle it. We'll check in when we land. Exaggerating? The accusation twisted in me, hot and familiar. It escalated then, Dad taking over fully, his voice firm, the one he used for business calls. Look, we're boarding now. Gates closing. You're an adult, handle it. We've supported you enough. Loans for your apartment, advice when you needed it. This trip is for us to recharge. Supported enough, like I was a line item closed out. My breath hitched, hand pressing against my chest as if to hold myself together. So that's it? You're officially leaving me to face this alone? The words hung, and for a beat, silence. Then Tara's interjection, closer now, like she'd leaned in. God, Allison, stop being so needy. Yes, we're going, deal with it. Jake's laugh barked out. Yeah, call a friend or something, we're out. Dad rapped it. Love you, kid, talk soon. Click. The line died, the screen going dark in my hand. I stared at it, numb at first, the phone slipping slightly in my sweat-damp palm. The verdict was in. They'd confirmed it, not with a formal disownment, but with boarding passes and indifference. Abandoned, effectively cut off in this moment of need, left to the mercy of strangers while they chased sunsets. My fingers curled around the phone, squeezing until it hurt, the plastic creaking faintly. Tears welled then, hot tracks down my cheeks, and I wiped them roughly with the back of my hand, smearing the IV tape. The bay felt smaller, the walls pressing in with their beige neutrality. Micro-movements replayed in my mind. Mom's hurried breath, Dad's authoritative cutoff, Tara's eye roll I could practically see, Jake's dismissive chuckle. Each one a nail in the coffin of our dynamic. I'd begged, laid bare my fear, and they'd boarded anyway. The pulse oximeter beeped faster, mirroring my racing heart, and I forced deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth, like I'd taught clients in panic. Mia returned then, pushing the curtain aside with a soft swish, her ponytail swinging. Ready to go? Transport's here. She noticed my face, the red eyes, and her expression softened, hand hovering as if to pat my arm but thinking better. Everything okay? I nodded jerkily, setting the phone on the side table with a clunk, screen down. Yeah, just family stuff. She helped adjust the bed rails, her touches efficient but kind, wheeling me out into the hall where lights glared brighter, staff bustling past with clipboards and carts. As we moved toward the OR doors, the wheels rumbling over tile seams, the full weight settled. They hadn't just prioritized vacation, they declared me on my own, their words a formal severance of the support I'd craved. No turning back now. The doors loomed, swinging open with a whoosh of colder air. Dr. Ramirez waited inside, masked and gowned, nodding reassuringly. We'll take good care of you, Allison. Strangers care, the irony burned. I lay back, staring at the ceiling lights sliding by, each one a blur. The abandonment wasn't just absence, it was a choice, echoed in that call's finality. But as the anesthesiologist approached, mask in hand, a defiant thought pierced the pain. I'd survive this, not for them, but despite them. The mask descended, cool against my face, and the world faded, their verdict ringing in my ears. The world swam back into focus slowly, a haze of antiseptic and beeping monitors pulling me from the anesthetic fog. My throat felt raw, like I'd swallowed gravel, and a heavy bandage pressed against my neck, tugging with every shallow breath. I blinked against the harsh fluorescent lights, the recovery room coming into view, curtains partitioning other beds, a nurse checking a chart nearby. My body ached, heavy and sluggish, but I was alive. Surgery was over. I shifted slightly, wincing at the pull of stitches, my hand groping for the bedrail to ground myself. The clock on the wall read 2:17 p.m. Hours had passed, but it felt like minutes since that final call with my family, their voices dismissing me as they boarded their flight. The memory stung sharper than the incision, and I squeezed my eyes shut, willing it away. That's when it happened, the call that changed everything. Not from them but from Nurse Mia, whose voice cut through the haze like a lifeline. She appeared at my bedside, her ponytail slightly askew now, a phone pressed to her ear. Her free hand adjusted my blanket gently, but her expression was tense, lips pursed as she listened. Yes, I understand, she said into the phone, glancing at me with eyes that held something new, urgency. I'll let her know, please hold. She lowered the phone, covering the mouthpiece, and leaned closer, her voice low but steady. Allison, it's Dr. Ramirez. He needs to speak with your family urgently. There were complications during surgery, nothing life-threatening but serious enough. They need to know the full picture. My heart lurched, the monitor beeping faster as I processed her words. Complications. I nodded weakly, my voice hoarse. They're in Aruba, probably landed by now. Mia's brow furrowed, and she raised the phone again, relaying this to Dr. Ramirez. I caught fragments. Lymph nodes, spread further, monitoring closely. My fingers tightened on the bedrail, the cold metal biting into my palm. Complications weren't in the plan. Dr. Ramirez had said it'd be straightforward, remove the thyroid, check the nodes, done. But now? I tried to sit up, pain shooting through my neck, and Mia gently pressed my shoulder down. Easy, you need to stay still. She hung up, then dialed another number, her fingers quick on the keypad. I'm calling your emergency contact. Your mom, right? I nodded, too tired to argue, though dread coiled in my gut. They'd dismissed routine. Would Sirius even move them? The call connected and I heard Mom's voice, tinny but unmistakable, laced with irritation. Hello, we just got to the hotel. What's this about? Mia stood straighter, her tone professional but firm. Mrs. Thompson, this is Mia from St. Luke's Medical Center. I'm with Allison post-surgery. There were complications, some unexpected spread to the lymph nodes. Dr. Ramirez needs to discuss her condition with you immediately. Can you, or someone, return? Silence stretched, and I stared at the ceiling, counting tiles to keep from screaming. Mom's voice came back, flustered now. Complications? She said it was routine. We're in Aruba. The flights. Mia cut in, her voice sharpening. Ma'am, this is critical. Allison needs family support. Can you arrange to come back? I heard Dad in the background, his voice rising, then Tara's sharp, What now? Jake mumbled something incoherent. Mom stammered, We didn't know it was that serious, she didn't say. Mia's eyes flicked to me, softening briefly before returning to the phone. She did try to tell you. Please, make arrangements, I'll have Dr. Ramirez call with details. She hung up after giving them the hospital's direct line, her hand lingering on the phone as if bracing herself. She turned to me, adjusting the IV line with careful fingers. They're shaken. They'll call back soon, I'm sure. Shaken. The word didn't erase the sting of their absence, but it shifted something. I lay back, the bandage tight against my throat, and let the reality sink in. They were coming back, not out of love, but because a nurse had forced them to face the truth. My hand rested on my stomach, rising and falling with each labored breath, the monitor's beep a steady companion. Mia checked my chart, her pen scratching softly. You did great in there, she said, almost as an afterthought, but her glance held weight. We're keeping you overnight for observation. The nodes, they took more than planned, but you're stable. Stable. Another hollow word, but her presence, her action, grounded me more than my family's promises ever had. Minutes ticked by, the room's hum a backdrop to my thoughts. My phone buzzed on the side table, and I reached for it, wincing at the movement. A text from Mom. Booking flights back, we'll be there tomorrow. So sorry, Allie. No emojis, no warmth, just guilt in typed words. Then Dad's. Didn't know it was this bad. Hang in there. Tara and Jake followed, their messages brief, echoing the same forced remorse. I set the phone down, screen dark, my fingers brushing the bandage. They were coming, but only because Mia's call had shattered their denial, exposing the stakes they'd ignored. It wasn't love driving them, it was obligation, maybe fear of looking bad. Another nurse popped in, checking my vitals, her hands cool as she adjusted the pulse oximeter. Family on the way? She asked casually, and I nodded, lips tight. Tomorrow. She smiled, oblivious to the undercurrent. Good, you'll need the support. Support, another word that didn't fit their rushed return. As she left, I closed my eyes, the weight of the day pressing down. Mia lingered, refilling my water cup, her small actions a contrast to my family's grand absence. The complications weren't just medical, they'd ripped open the truth of our dynamic, laid bare by a nurse who saw what they wouldn't. I shifted, the bed creaking, and stared at the ceiling, tracing cracks I knew weren't there. The spark from before burned brighter now, fed by their forced reckoning. They'd face me tomorrow, see the tubes, the bandages, the reality they'd dismissed. And I'd face them, not as the fixer, but as someone done begging for their scraps. Mia patted my arm before leaving. Rest now, we've got you. Her words, simple and real, anchored me. The family's return was coming, but this moment, Mia's call, their panic, was the pivot. I wasn't just surviving, I was about to demand they see me, scars and all. Coming back wasn't instantaneous. The family scramble unfolded in frantic texts and calls that buzzed my phone through the haze of pain meds, each notification a jolt against the quiet hum of the recovery room. By evening, as the sun dipped low outside the window, casting orange slants across the linoleum floor, Mia informed me they'd booked red-eye flights, cutting their vacation short by days. "They're landing early morning," she said, adjusting my pillow with a gentle fluff, her eyes meeting mine in quiet solidarity. I nodded weakly, the bandage pulling taut with the motion, a constant reminder of the nodes they'd excised, the unexpected spread that had forced this turnaround. Sleep came in fits that night, morphine blurring the edges, but dreams twisted with airport rushes and accusing stares. When morning broke, gray light filtering through blinds, the door creaked open, and there they were. Disheveled, luggage in tow, faces a mix of guilt and exhaustion. Mom entered first, her hair frizzy from the flight, eyes red-rimmed as she dropped her carry-on by the chair with a thud. "Allison, oh honey," she whispered, rushing to my bedside, her hand hovering over mine before clasping it tightly, fingers cold and clammy. Dad followed, wheeling a suitcase that bumped the door frame, his glasses askew, clearing his throat repeatedly like he always did when uncomfortable. Tara lingered by the door, arms crossed over her rumpled blouse, phone in hand but screen dark for once. Jake slouched in last, backpack slung over one shoulder, avoiding my gaze by staring at the IV stand. The room filled with their presence, but it felt crowded in the wrong way, not supportive but invasive, like they'd crashed a space I'd claimed as my own. Mom squeezed my hand harder, her voice cracking. "We came as soon as we heard. That nurse, she made it sound so serious. We're so sorry we left." Sorry, the word hung, superficial, and I felt my jaw tighten, teeth gritting against the soreness in my throat. I pulled my hand back slowly, folding it under the blanket, the fabric bunching under my fingers. Dad stepped closer, patting my shoulder awkwardly, his palm heavy. "Yeah, kid, we didn't know about the complications. If you'd said..." He trailed off, shifting his weight from foot to foot, shoes squeaking on the floor. I stared at them, the monitor beeping steadily beside me, each one amplifying the silence. Their stunned scramble was evident, the hastily packed bags, the dark circles mirroring my own, the way Tara fidgeted with her necklace, twisting the chain. But it wasn't enough. "You did know," I rasped, voice gravelly from the tube they'd removed, each word an effort that burned. They froze, Mom's eyes widening, hand fluttering to her chest. I pushed on, sitting up slightly despite the pull of stitches, propping myself on elbows that trembled. "I told you it was cancer. I said I needed you, but you chose the beach." Tara uncrossed her arms, stepping forward with a defensive huff. "Come on, Al, we thought it was the good kind. You always handle everything." Her air quotes around good made my blood heat, and I fixed her with a stare, unblinking. Jake muttered, "Yeah, sis, we're here now. Let's not dwell, like this was a minor spat." Dad nodded vigorously. "Exactly. Water under the bridge. How can we help?" Mom chimed in, pulling a chair closer with a scrape, sitting down and reaching for my hand again. "We'll stay as long as you need. I brought your favorite snacks from home." She gestured to her bag as if granola bars could erase the abandonment. I shook my head, the motion sending a wave of nausea, but I swallowed it down, fingers clenching the blanket tighter. "No, you don't get to swoop in now and play heroes. This isn't the first time." My voice gained strength, raw but steady, years of swallowed words bubbling up. They exchanged glances, Mom's lips pursing, Dad's brow furrowing, Tara rolling her eyes subtly, Jake shuffling his feet. I didn't let them interrupt. "Remember my graduation? I was valedictorian, and you spent the dinner toasting Tara's internship. Or when I got that award at work, you turned the call into Jake's promotion party. I've been invisible unless you needed fixing." Mom's hand withdrew, clasping her lap instead, fingers twisting together. "That's not fair, Allison. We've always been proud." "Proud?" The lie stung and I laughed hoarsely, the sound bitter. "Proud? You paid for Tara's wedding, flew to Jake's games, me, a card if that. And now, cancer surgery. I begged you to stay, and you boarded anyway." Tara cut in, voice rising. "You're twisting it. We didn't know the risks." I met her eyes, calm now, the exposure feeling like shedding a weight. "You didn't ask, you dismissed." "Dramatic," you said. "Easy cancer. That's hypocrisy. Expecting me to show up for you, but vanishing when it's my turn." Dad cleared his throat again, louder, stepping between us. Allie, we're family. We made a mistake. Let's move on. Mistake, like forgetting milk, not abandoning your daughter. Jake nodded. Yeah, we're sorry. What more do you want? I leaned back against the pillows, exhaustion creeping but resolve holding. I want you to own it. Decades of neglect. Me mediating your fights, loaning money being the glue. And you repay with this? I gestured weakly to the empty space they'd left yesterday, the bandage on my neck. They shifted uncomfortably. Mom dabbing her eyes with a tissue from her purse, crumpling it in her fist. Dad adjusting his glasses, avoiding my gaze. Tara crossing her arms tighter, nails digging into her sleeves. Jake staring at the floor, toe scuffing the tile. The scramble's energy deflated, their stunned faces paling under the hospital lights. We didn't see it that way, Mom whispered, voice small. I nodded, the powerful exit not physical, I couldn't leave, but emotional. Now you do, apologies mean nothing without change. Leave if you want, I've handled worse alone. Silence fell, thick and unbroken except for the beeps. They didn't leave immediately, hovering awkwardly, but I'd made my stand, exposing the rot calmly without screams. Mia poked her head in later, sensing the tension, and suggested they get coffee. As they filed out, bags in tow, I exhaled, the bandage rising with my breath. Their hypocrisy laid bare, the dynamic cracked. I wasn't rejecting them forever, just their superficial rush. The real conversations could wait, for now I'd flipped the script, forcing them to confront what they'd ignored. Flipping the script didn't erase the tension overnight. Their awkward hovering in the hospital room lingered like a bad aftertaste. But as discharge approached 2 days later, I waved them off with a firm, I need space, watching them file out with murmured promises to check in. The door clicked shut, leaving blessed quiet, and I sank back against the pillows, bandage still snug but healing, the incision itching under the tape. Mia helped me pack, her efficient folds of my gown a small comfort, but true relief came when my phone buzzed. Not from family, but from Sarah, my best friend since college, the one who'd texted daily through this ordeal. On my way to pick you up, her message read, followed by a heart emoji that felt genuine, not obligatory. As I waited, dressed in loose sweats that didn't chafe, fingers drumming on the bedrail, the contrast hit me hard, their forced presence versus the chosen allies who'd stepped up without a second thought. Sarah arrived 20 minutes later, bursting through the door with a reusable coffee cup in one hand and a bouquet of sunflowers in the other, their yellow petals bright against the sterile white walls. She set them down on the side table with a gentle clink, then enveloped me in a hug, careful around my neck, her shampoo scent familiar and soothing. Hey, warrior, she whispered, pulling back to scan my face, her brown eyes warm with concern but no pity. Behind her trailed Mark, our mutual friend from work, carrying a blanket and pillow for the car ride, his lopsided grin easing the room's heaviness. We come bearing comfort and zero drama, he said, draping the blanket over the wheelchair Mia had rolled in. Unlike the family's stiff apologies, this felt effortless. Sarah signed the discharge papers while Mark chatted with Mia about traffic, his laugh light and unforced. No hovering guilt, no defensive excuses, just presence. As Mia wheeled me out, Sarah walked alongside, hand on my shoulder, thumb rubbing small circles. I've got your meds sorted at home. Picked them up yesterday. And dinner's on me tonight, easy stuff for your throat. Her words flowed naturally, planning without overwhelming, a far cry from Mom's frantic snack offers that masked avoidance. The car ride home was a balm. Mark drove, windows cracked to let in fresh air, while Sarah sat in the back with me, holding my hand loosely, fingers interlaced without pressure. We didn't dive into deep talks right away. Instead, she played our old playlist, soft indie tunes from college days, and hummed along off-key, making me smile despite the soreness. Mark chimed in with bad jokes. Why did the thyroid go to therapy? It had too many nodules to unpack. I chuckled hoarsely, the vibration pulling at stitches. But it felt good, real. No tiptoeing around the cancer like my family had, glancing at each other as if I'd shatter. These were my chosen ones, the allies who'd texted encouragement during chemo consults, dropped off meals without fanfare, listened to my fears at 2 a.m. without judgment. Arriving at my apartment, the contrast sharpened further. Sarah helped me inside, arm around my waist for support, while Mark carried my bag, setting it down gently by the couch. The space felt welcoming now, not lonely. sunlight streaming through windows I'd left open, plants perked up from Sarah's watering visits. She bustled in the kitchen, blending a smoothie with yogurt and bananas, the whir of the machine a homey sound. "No solids yet, Doc's orders," she said, handing me the glass with a straw, her fingers brushing mine warmly. Mark fluffed pillows on the couch, arranging them just so, then sat cross-legged on the floor, pulling out a deck of cards. "Uno, or too competitive for post-op?" His wink was playful, easing any awkwardness. We played, cards slapping down lightly, laughter bubbling as Sarah accused Mark of cheating, her mock glare dissolving into giggles. Between rounds, the conversation turned genuine, but not forced. "How are you really feeling?" Sarah asked softly, setting her cards aside, hand on my knee. I sipped the smoothie, the coolness soothing my throat, and opened up about the surgery fear, the family's abandonment, the nurse's call that dragged them back. They listened, Mark nodding thoughtfully, Sarah's eyes steady on mine, no interruptions to defend or deflect. "That sucks," Mark said plainly, shuffling the deck absently. "But you're not alone in this. We've got your back." Sarah added, "Always have. Remember that trip we took after my breakup? You were there for me." This is just us returning the favor. No strings. The warmth enveloped me, a stark opposite to the toxic family dynamic that had festered for years. Their presence had been laced with hypocrisy, rushed hugs hiding resentment, apologies that skirted real accountability. Here, with Sarah and Mark, it was unconditional. No scorekeeping, no expectations of gratitude. As the game wound down, sun dipping lower, Mark ordered takeout, soft noodles for me, spicy for them, paying without a word. We ate on the couch, trays balanced on laps, chatting about mundane things. Sarah's new project at work, Mark's failed attempt at baking. Laughter came easy, my voice strengthening with each story, the bandage a minor annoyance now. As evening fell, they didn't overstay. Sarah helped me to bed, tucking the blanket around me with a kiss on the forehead, Mark promising to check in tomorrow. "Text if you need anything, even ice cream at midnight," she said, squeezing my hand before they left, the door closing softly. Alone but not lonely, I lay there, staring at the ceiling fan's slow spin, the contrast crystallizing. Biological family had blood ties but conditional love, showing up only when shamed. Chosen ones? They chose me daily, through actions small and steady, texts, visits, unwavering support. The crisis had highlighted it, friends stepping up where blood faltered. This warm moment wasn't flashy, but it healed deeper than any surgery, rebuilding what neglect had eroded. I drifted to sleep, the sunflowers on my nightstand a yellow promise of better bonds. Drifting to sleep with that promise of better bonds didn't mean waking up healed. The next morning brought a dull ache in my neck, and a flood of texts from the family, their words lighting up my phone screen like insistent knocks on a door I wasn't ready to open. Sarah had left a note on the kitchen counter before heading to work. "Call if you need me. Meds at 10 a.m. Her handwriting neat and looped, a small anchor in the day. I sat up slowly, the bandage pulling with the motion, and reached for the water glass she'd filled, condensation beating on the sides. My throat was still sore, swallowing a careful sip that cooled but didn't erase the rawness. The apartment hummed with quiet, birds chirping outside the window, distant traffic a low rumble, and in that space the aftermath settled in, not as a storm but as a steady rain I had to navigate. Today, I'd build my fortress, starting with how I'd handle their attempts to breach it, setting boundaries like bricks I'd lay one by one. The first text was from Mom, timestamped 7:02 a.m. "How are you feeling this morning? We can come over if you need help." Her words seemed earnest, but I pictured her typing them from the hotel they'd checked into after their rushed return, fingers hesitating over the send button. Dad's followed. "Let us know what you need. Groceries? Rides?" Tara. "Hey, sis, sorry again. Want company? Jake? Yo, Al, hit me up if bored." They piled up, each one a probe, testing the walls I'd started erecting in the hospital. I set the phone down face down on the nightstand, the vibration muffled against the wood, and stood carefully, legs steady but body heavy from meds. Padding to the bathroom, I avoided the mirror at first, brushing my teeth with slow strokes, foam building as I rinsed gently. The bandage stared back when I finally looked, white gauze taped neatly, a symbol of what I'd endured alone. Their texts weren't apologies, they were bids for normalcy, skipping the hard work. I returned to the living room, sinking onto the couch where Sarah and Mark had sat last night, the cushions still indented slightly from their weight. My laptop waited on the coffee table, and I pulled it closer, fingers hovering over the keys. Handling the aftermath meant more than ignoring them. It required establishing rules, clear and unyielding, to protect the peace I'd glimpsed with my friends. I opened a new email, addressing it to all of them, the cursor blinking expectantly. Subject, moving forward, I typed, then paused, nails tapping the edge of the keyboard. This wasn't a confrontation like in the hospital. It was a declaration, my new rules of engagement spelled out without room for negotiation. Hi everyone, I began, words flowing haltingly at first. I appreciate you coming back after the nurse called, but we need to address what's happened. Not just the surgery, but the pattern that's led here. My fingers moved faster now, the clack of keys, a rhythm building resolve. I detailed the boundaries. No unannounced visits, text first and respect if I say no. Conversations about my health on my terms, not theirs. No minimizing or comparing. Apologies must come with actions, listening without defending, acknowledging the neglect without excuses. If you want to rebuild, I wrote, it starts with therapy, for all of us, separately at first. I've scheduled mine. I suggest you do the same. I hit send before doubt could creep in, the whoosh of the email a release, like exhaling a breath held too long. The phone buzzed immediately, Mom calling. I let it ring, watching the screen light up, her photo from last Christmas popping up, her smile forced even then. Voicemail dinged. Allison, honey, got your email, let's talk this out, coming over? Her voice wavered, a mix of concern and pushback. I texted back, not today, need time, respect that. Short, firm. Dad's call came next, his gruff tone in the message. This seems extreme, Allie, we're family. Extreme, like their vacation choice hadn't been. I replied the same, boundaries aren't extreme, they're necessary. Tara texted, therapy? Really? Can't we just move on? Her words flashed, defensive. No, I sent. Moving on means changing. Jake, dude, harsh, but okay, I'll think about it, at least honest. Each exchange was a micro-battle, their reactions testing my walls. Mom tried again, a text pleading, please let me bring soup. I pictured her in the kitchen, stirring a pot absently, guilt driving her. But soup wouldn't fix decades. Not now, I responded, then silenced notifications, the phone going dark. I stood, pacing the room slowly, socks whispering on the carpet, each step reinforcing my stance. The aftermath wasn't just their regret, it was my reclamation, handling their push with calm deflection. A knock at the door startled me. Delivery? But peeking through the peephole, it was Dad, holding a bag of what looked like takeout, his face lined with fatigue. My heart skipped, hand on the knob, but I didn't turn it. Dad, I said not today, I called through the door, voice steady despite the waver inside. He shifted, bag crinkling. Come on, kid, just want to see you're okay. Micro-actions spoke volumes, his foot tapping impatiently, the way he glanced at his watch. I'm okay, but this is the boundary. Go home. Silence, then his sigh heavy. All right, call when you're ready. Footsteps receded and I leaned against the door, forehead cool on the wood, breathing deep. It hurt, enforcing this, but the alternative, letting them in unchanged, hurt more. Sarah checked in via text. How's the fortress holding? I smiled, typing back about the email and Dad's attempt. Proud of you, she replied with a thumbs up. That support bolstered me as more family texts trickled. Mom's long message agreeing to therapy but slipping in justifications. I read it, fingers scrolling slowly, then archived without reply. Establishing rules meant consistency, not debate. By afternoon, fatigue hit, and I napped on the couch, blanket pulled high, the apartment a safe haven now. Waking to evening light, I checked emails, no blowback, just tentative acceptances. Tara, fine, I'll look into a therapist. Jake, yeah, me too. Small wins, but I'd monitor actions, not words. Handling this aftermath was ongoing, each interaction a brick in my fortress, strong, but with gates I'd control. No more open doors for neglect, engagement on my terms, or not at all. As night fell, I sipped tea Sarah had left, steam rising in curls, the warmth seeping in. Boundaries weren't walls to isolate, they were structures to protect growth. And for the first time I felt the ground firm beneath me. Turning pain into positive change didn't happen in a grand epiphany. It unfolded gradually over the weeks of recovery, but the pivotal moment came one crisp afternoon about a month post-surgery, when I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, fingers poised over the keys, deciding to channel my story into advocacy rather than letting it fester unspoken. The apartment was bathed in soft autumn light filtering through the curtains, dust motes dancing in the beams, and the faint scar on my neck, now a thin pink line under a light bandage, itched faintly as I shifted in my chair. I'd been scrolling through online forums for thyroid cancer survivors, reading tales of isolation that mirrored mine. Not just medical, but emotional, families who dismissed or abandoned. My coffee mug steamed beside me, the aroma grounding as I sipped carefully, the warmth seeping into my palms wrapped around the ceramic. This wasn't about revenge on my family, it was reclaiming my legacy, using the neglect as fuel to help others, turning Allison the Invisible into Allison the Advocate on my own terms. The idea had simmered since hospital discharge, sparked by Mia's quiet encouragement. "You have a voice, use it." But today it crystallized. I opened a new document, the blank page glaring, cursor blinking like a challenge. My hands hovered, nails tapping the spacebar lightly before diving in. My name is Allison, and at 31, thyroid cancer wasn't the hardest part. It was facing it alone because my family chose a vacation over my surgery. The words flowed haltingly at first, my typing punctuated by pauses to rub my neck, feeling the raised scar tissue under fingertips. I described the diagnosis, the Zoom call dismissals, the solitary pre-op wait, micro details like the IV's cold pinch, the beeps echoing in empty bays. But I wove in the broader impact, how neglect erodes self-worth, how families condition us to swallow pain for peace. As paragraphs built, I stood to pace, socks sliding on the hardwood, circling the table with measured steps. This wasn't a rant, it was a beacon for others. I sat again, adding sections on spotting emotional abuse, signs I'd ignored, sidelined achievements, conditional support. My voice, though internal now, echoed the hospital confrontation, but directed outward. Fingers flew faster, deleting and refining, the delete key clicking rhythmically. I included resources, support groups, therapy links, even a nod to nurses like Mia, who bridge gaps families leave. The document grew to pages, my coffee cooling untouched as immersion took hold. Midway, doubt crept. Would sharing make me vulnerable again? I leaned back, chair creaking, staring at the ceiling fan's lazy spin. But vulnerability was the point. Reclaiming meant owning the story, not hiding it. I saved the draft titled "Seen at Last, Breaking Free from Family Neglect" and emailed it to Sarah for feedback, attaching with a quick note, "Thinking of posting this on a blog or forum. Thoughts?" Her reply buzzed in minutes. "Powerful. Do it. You could start a chain reaction." Encouraged, I refined more, adding a call to action. "If this resonates, share your story. Let's build a community where no one faces crisis alone." Posting it online was the next step. But first, I needed to confront the family tie-in, reclaiming our name without their shadow. The Thompsons. Dad's steady job, Mom's community involvement, Tara's corporate shine, Jake's creative pursuits, all polished exteriors hiding the cracks. I'd been the unseen thread, now I'd weave my own tapestry. I searched for advocacy platforms, mouse clicking through tabs, settling on a cancer support site with a blog section. Uploading the piece? I hesitated over the submit button, thumb circling the trackpad. Click. Published under A. Thompson, a subtle reclaim, using the name but on my terms, associating it with resilience, not neglect. The response was immediate, notifications pinging as comments rolled in. I refreshed the page obsessively, leaning forward, elbows on the table, chin in hands. "Thank you, this is my story too," one read. "Your family's choice is heartbreaking, glad you found strength." Another, "Advocating for boundaries changed my life." Each comment was a validation, strangers' words filling the void my family had left. I replied to a few, typing thoughtfully, "It starts with one conversation. Reach out to a friend or professional." My scar tingled, a reminder, but now empowering, not shameful. As the afternoon waned, light shifting to gold, I closed the laptop with a soft snap, standing to stretch, arms overhead, feeling the pull in my healing muscles. This advocacy wasn't a one-off, it was a legacy shift. Using my experience to educate, support, prevent others' pain. I imagined the family stumbling on it someday, seeing Thompson linked to positive change, not their toxic dynamic. No malice, just fact. I'd turned neglect into impact, helping dozens already judging by views climbing. A text from an unknown number popped up. A reader, "Your post inspired me to talk to my sibling about our parents' favoritism. Thank you." I smiled, fingers brushing the phone screen. This was it. Positive ripples, my pain alchemized. I walked to the window, parting curtains wider, watching leaves rustle outside. Reclaiming wasn't about erasing them, it was building beyond, a legacy of empathy and strength. As evening approached, I brewed fresh tea, the kettle whistling sharply, steam rising as I poured. Sipping slowly, the warmth spread, mirroring the internal shift. I'd created impact, one story at a time on my own terms, the middle child no longer invisible, but a voice for the overlooked. Sipping that tea as the evening deepened didn't just warm my body, it stirred a quiet reflection that had been building since the surgery, a slow unraveling of the knots I'd tied around my self-worth for so long. The kitchen light cast a soft glow on the table, the laptop still humming faintly from where I'd closed it after checking the blog responses, each comment a small affirmation from strangers who'd become a virtual community. My scar, now barely covered by a light strip of tape, felt less like a wound and more like a mark of passage as I traced it absently with my fingertip, the raised line smooth under the pressure. The apartment was still, save for the distant hum of the fridge and the occasional car passing outside, and in that stillness, I let my mind wander back. Not to rehash the hurts, but to sift through them for the truths they'd revealed. This wasn't about tallying scores anymore. It was about finding peace in the realization that my value didn't hinge on their validation but on the quiet strength I'd cultivated within myself. I set the mug down with a soft clink, the steam curling lazily upward, and leaned back in the chair, my hands folding in my lap, fingers interlacing loosely. The journey here had been jagged, the diagnosis that snuck up like a thief, the family's abandonment that cut deeper than any scalpel, the nurse's call that yanked them back into my orbit. But as I sat there breathing evenly, the pieces settled into a new pattern. I'd always measured my worth by how well I held them together, mediating arguments with patient words, remembering details they forgot, sacrificing my time like it was infinite. Yet, in their eyes, it was never enough. I was the backdrop, not the star. That realization, sharp at first, now softened into acceptance. My worth wasn't in their applause or their presence, it was in the resilience that got me through the operating room alone, the courage to set boundaries when they returned, the drive to turn pain into advocacy that helped others feel seen. Standing slowly, I walked to the living room window, parting the curtains with a gentle tug, the fabric whispering against the rod. Outside, streetlights flickered on, casting pools of yellow on the sidewalk, where people hurried home, their lives a blur of motion. I pressed my palm against the cool glass, feeling the faint vibration of the city beyond, and thought about the blog post again. Those responses, your story gave me the push to speak up. I felt less alone reading this. They weren't just echoes. They were proof that my experiences had value independent of family approval. I'd reclaim the Thompson name not by conforming to their expectations, but by associating it with empathy and change, a legacy built on authenticity rather than appearances. My fingers traced a circle on the window pane, condensation forming from my breath, and I smiled faintly at the impermanence of it, much like the hold they'd had on my self-image. The peace came in waves, not a sudden flood. I turned from the window, padding to the couch where I'd spent so many recovery days, sinking into the cushions that molded to my shape now, familiar and comforting. Pulling a throw blanket over my legs, the soft wool scratching lightly against my skin, I closed my eyes and let the internal monologue play out. Why had I chased their validation so hard? Because it was the script I'd learned early, the middle child who fixed, who didn't demand. But cancer had rewritten it, forcing me to see that true worth is internal, a quiet knowing that I am enough as I am. The woman who helps strangers through her words, who laughs with chosen friends, who faces fears head-on. Their neglect hadn't diminished me. It had illuminated the light I carried alone. Opening my eyes, I reached for the journal on the side table, its leather cover worn from sporadic entries, and flipped to a blank page, pen uncapping with a click. I wrote stream of consciousness, the ink flowing smoothly. Today I forgive, not them fully yet, but myself for believing I needed their mirror to see my reflection. The words filled lines, my handwriting looping unevenly from lingering fatigue, but each sentence lifted a weight. Therapy sessions had helped unpack this, the counselor nodding as I described the patterns, but this moment was mine, unguided. I capped the pen, setting the journal aside with a pat, the pages rustling softly. As night fully settled, stars peeking through the urban haze outside, I rose to make another cup of tea, the kettle's boil a soothing rumble. Pouring the hot water over the bag, watching it steep and darken, I realized this piece wasn't fragile. It was rooted deep, nourished by self-validation that no one could take. The family's therapy had started tentatively. Mom texted updates about her sessions. Dad grumbled but attended. Tara and Jake followed suit with varying enthusiasm. We'd had a few cautious calls, boundaries holding like guardrails, conversations inching toward honesty without defensiveness. Change was slow but possible, and my role wasn't fixer anymore. It was participant, on equal footing. Sipping the fresh tea, mug warm in my hands, I returned to the window, gazing at the quiet street. The scar would fade, but the lesson wouldn't. My worth is mine, internal and unshakable. In this reflection, I found true peace, not in perfection but in wholeness, a self complete without their pieces. The city lights twinkled, and for the first time in years, I felt fully at home in my own skin. So, what do you think? Did I set boundaries strong enough? Or should I have pushed for more change sooner? Drop a comment below with your take, and if you've got a story of breaking free from family patterns or finding self-worth after a crisis, share it. I'd love to hear how you navigated it. Remember, your experiences could inspire someone else scrolling through. Don't forget to like if this resonated, subscribe for more real stories of resilience and growth, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. You're not alone in this. Let's build each other up.